Yes, I have loved you with an everlasting love, an everlasting love, an everlasting love. Therefore, with loving kindness have I drawn you, drawn you, drawn you.
Okay, we're recording episode 20.
Hi, this is episode 20, and it's entitled The Honest Truth, because we're going to talk about different ways that people, in a way, it's like a way of saying different forms of lying. There's actually different ways we lie, and that one of them is when we're having a discussion with somebody. If we don't like the subject or what somebody's saying, we tend to try to get it off track to avoid really facing it. And so one of the things we're going to talk about today is some logical fallacies that people use to try to get off track. And so Chastity is going to give us some definitions and examples of those logical fallacies to help us discuss what goes on every day with people. And we talked about this a little bit, about sometimes when people are doing a podcast and people don't want to hear what you're saying, then they'll focus on, oh, well, you're ugly, as if that had anything to do with what the people were saying. We gave a little example about things like that, but I'm going to have Chastity give some more examples and explain things a little bit more so we can talk about how we can really be honest and really tell the truth in our thinking and in our speech to other people.
Yeah, thank you. So here's the thing now. When it comes to these logical fallacies, I want to explain how I came to learn about these fallacies in the first place. Because the two most controversial subjects I've dealt with in my life have been the abortion debate and also veganism versus carnism. This which is a whole thing in and of itself, because people, what they do is they have a position, they have their opinion, and they want to justify it using any means necessary. And when people debate topics, they often are not really debating, because what they will do is like, well, somebody will make a point and they don't know how to argue against it. It's like, yeah, but you're ugly, so what you say doesn't matter, or there might be, or like in the case of veganism, people try to discredit vegans by saying, well, lions and bears kill and eat other animals, therefore it's okay for us to as well. Now, and particularly, I don't remember the name of that specific logical fallacy. What they're doing is they're using a logical fallacy saying, well, because these other groups of animals do this thing, that means it's okay for us to. And it doesn't logically follow necessarily, but at the same time, they're also doing a red herring at the same time.
Yeah. Because
a red herring is a distraction. And what I want to do is, for people who haven't heard of a red herring, I want to read just the beginning of like the Wikipedia article about the red herring fallacy here. A red herring is something that misleads or distracts from a relevant or important question. It may be either a logical fallacy or a literary device that leads readers or audiences toward a false conclusion. A red herring may be used intentionally, as in mystery fiction, or as part of rhetorical strategies, example in politics. We'll get into that later. or may be used in argumentation inadvertently. Let's see. The term was popularized in 1807 by English polemicist William Cobbett, who told a story of having used a strong-smelling smoked fish to divert and distract hounds from chasing a rabbit. As an informal fallacy, the red herring falls into a broad class of relevance fallacies. Unlike the straw man, which involves a distortion of the other party's position, the red herring is a seemingly plausible, though ultimately irrelevant, diversionary tactic. According to the Oxford English Dictionary, a red herring may be intentional or unintentional. It is not necessarily a conscious intent to mislead. The expression is mainly used to assert that an argument is not relevant to the issue being discussed. For example, I think we should make the academic requirements stricter for students. I recommend you support this because we are in a budget crisis and we do not want our salaries affected. The second sentence, though used to support the first sentence, does not address that topic. So, and I want to give examples that people know. Just like I mentioned how people try to distract the issue by bringing up other species of animals and what they do as if that's relevant to the discussion of whether or not humans should be killing and eating animals. Mm-hmm. And then what people do, and they do this with the abortion debate. Now, the number one thing, pro-life or pro-choice people, listen up here, because what people do, and I've seen this, is they bring up the topic of rape. Mm-hmm. They bring up the topic of rape to distract from the issue, because the pro-life people are trying to say, well, you know, we should not be killing babies, we're killing innocent humans, and that's wrong. And then somebody's like, but what about in the case of rape? First of all, where is the relevance? Because here's the thing is, if you're against killing innocent people, then it should not matter how they were conceived specifically, because you're still against killing them.
Yeah.
But so what they're doing is they're bringing up an irrelevant topic. But then here's what they do: if the pro-life person falls for the trap and gets into the rape topic, they're no longer addressing the morality or legality of abortion. So if they fall for that trap, they failed. But if they continue on and they're still like, well, we still should not be killing them, then what the other side tries to do is they do an ad hominem attack. They try to say, well, you're insensitive to rape victims and you don't care who's raped, which the person does care, but they're trying to stay on topic. So then they start attacking that person because they can't argue against what they're saying.
Yeah.
Because they know that murder is wrong. They just won't admit it. So then they start attacking that person, and then what do? They start trying to find whoever the pro-life person is. They try to say, well, you've done this bad thing, and you kill bacteria every time you breathe or whatever, you know. And then they're trying to do like, well, I think that's even called tu quo, like, well, you do this thing too, and so you're bad, and so you're as bad as me, and so it doesn't really matter. And then they try to use that as a way to do like moral relativism. That's what they try to do, is like, well, yeah, but you're bad in these other ways, so you can't really criticize me for killing babies. So that's what they're trying to do, is they keep trying to distract the issue. They keep trying to get somebody sidetracked. And I have to say, you have to be extremely smart. You have to be extremely strong emotionally. And you have to be able to stay on topic when people distract you with these issues. Mm-hmm. And for example, and this is one thing that happened that changed my life. Is now I was in an abortion debate group, and there was somebody who asked me if I was vegan, and I'm like, well, no, what's a vegan? I didn't know. And then they said, well, you're full of shit. And I didn't know at the time what they were trying to do. But what they were trying to do is they were trying to say, well, you kill animals if you're not a vegan, therefore you can't criticize people for killing babies. Now, the person themselves was not arguing for veganism. They were not trying to encourage vegan. They were only trying to use the fact that I wasn't vegan at that time as a way of discrediting what I was saying. So they were doing a red herring, they were doing a personal attack, they were doing a tu quo, they were doing all the logical fallacies all in one statement. Now the result of that was that I ended up learning what veganism was. I started reading books on veganism, watching podcasts, documentaries, and I became a vegan, realizing, well, if I'm going to be morally consistent, that, yeah, I should probably not be killing the other animals too. You know, so now the thing is, even though much benefit came from that person doing that to me, because then I learned what veganism was through that, that doesn't mean that what they were doing was okay, because what they were still doing is they were just trying to discredit me by using dishonest means and an unfair way. So people, they can't debate, so they just try to shut someone down.
Yeah.
And here's what I think happens, and this is an example people can relate to, because when you see political advertisements by people running for, you know, whether they're running for president or some local office for mayor or governor or Congress or whatever, and there's people that are running against, well, their ads don't say anything about their own policies. Have you noticed that? Their ads aren't going to say, well, you know, if I'm elected, my plan is to do this and this because I think we need to do. Now, that would be something I would listen to. Instead of saying, well, you should not vote for this other guy because he's slightly worse than me. I'm pretty bad, but this guy over here is worse, so vote for me instead of him, please. That's literally the way that their ads come across to me. So what that tells me is, if their only way of promoting themselves is to tear somebody else down, then that's not a very convincing case. And another thing that I've seen people do is, like I mentioned, there was a famous guy who's a programmer who cares about free software, and apparently people were trying to discredit him and kick him out of the Free Software Foundation because they were accusing him of being a pedophile based on some things that he said about age and consent laws, and he may have said some other things. And I'll be honest, see, he can say wrong things. People can say wrong things sometimes. I know I do all the time.
By accident.
By accident.
A lot of times.
Yeah, but at least I'm honest in my own stupidity. So that's the point. But here's the thing is, a person can be wrong on topics of politics or other issues, but they can still be right in their quest for great computer software that's free and open source and all that too. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to take, well, you have this opinion on this thing, and that means that, well, 2 + 2 is no longer 4 because you have an opinion I disagree with. And I will tell you, a lot of autistic people, when it comes to math and computer programming and the way machines work, we're good at that. We're not so good at talking with people and dealing with social issues. I find it challenging as an autistic person, and so some of us stick our foot in our mouth, so to speak, which is an interesting expression. I'll have to look into the history of that sometime. But but that's the thing. What they do is they're taking one thing a person says and using that to discredit everything else they say. And you can do that with literally anybody. No matter who they are, they could be wrong about one thing. Everybody is wrong about some things and right about other things. And so if you decide, well, I'm not going to listen to what this person says, I'm not going to respond to their argument, I'm not going to read their books, I'm not going to do any of this thing because of this whatever. It's like, and I know that people do this. It's a way of discriminating against groups of people too. It's like, well, I'm not going to hire this person for a job or whatever else it might be. But basically, these relevance fallacies, you could say, which is a red herring, is one of them.
Irrelevance?
Yeah, they call it Wikipedia article referred to as a relevance fallacy, but either way, it's the same idea: is that something is irrelevant to the topic; it has no relevance.
Oh, okay.
Therefore, they're bringing in another issue.
Right.
And people do this about various topics, and I think it's very easy to do this because people, they're in a habit. They see this example, like I mentioned, the politicians. They see the people doing this. They see famous people who are on TV doing this, and the people win debates not by actually saying things that make sense, but it's like, they point out one flaw in their opponent, and therefore everything you say is wrong. Mm-hmm. And I would never do that because, first of all, the golden rule. I don't want people to discredit what I say just because my hair is messy. And I brush my hair, can you tell? But
Thank God.
my mom makes me brush my hair. But this time
I make you do it?
Yeah, but this time I remembered on my own because you reminded me before. But I'm just saying that's an example of how people can discredit you by bringing up irrelevant topics. And in fact, I wrote an entire book called Irrelevant, where I had each page and little section was about how people connect things that are not related to each other, and things are irrelevant, and yet they're discussed as if they're all the same. And I think that's something we need to work to change. But I think this all comes back to having honest communication. Because when you're having a discussion on any topic, as people do, because sometimes you don't have to have conversations with people because they're not someone you're not with them, and you can simply choose not to comment on their Facebook posts, which is something I need to stop doing, is commenting on people's Facebook posts, because sometimes I say dumb stuff and it then turns into an argument, so it's probably best not to do that. But when I have conversations with my mom or people at work and there's conflicts to resolve, then it would be way too easy to discredit them and not respect them on what they're actually saying, and be like, well, you did this thing 6 months ago, and so I'm not going to listen to you now. And that doesn't really work with your managers either, by the way, because even if they are completely wrong, they can still fire you. So there's that. So, but the main thing is, people, when you don't know the answer to something, it's better to just admit that, rather than to resort to red herrings and personal attacks and getting into other things that are not relevant to the topic.
And when you disagree with somebody on something, I have found out that rather than getting an argument, if you've already stated what you believe about it and somebody wants to pick a fight, I found it's best to just stand my ground and say, well, I disagree, and leave it at that.
Yeah.
Because some people do want to debate and fight over things, and they want to keep it going and challenge you and say, well, why do you think that? I know more than you. And finally, you just have to tell them, well, I disagree. It doesn't mean you're going to change how you're going to do things, because you already have your own belief. And I've had to do that with people sometimes after I've tried to reason with them, and it doesn't work to try to reason with them because they don't want to reason. Then I just say, well, I disagree, and then I let at that, and they finally have to let it drop.
Yeah.
Because if you just say that and then you don't say any more, what are they going to do?
Well, yeah, and a lot of the times these fights they're trying to have with you aren't important.
Right.
There are times, like, okay, for example, if you have like a couple who's deciding where to live and which schools their children go to, or whether they homeschool them, that's a discussion those two people have to have. That's a discussion they have to have. So it's not about winning an argument, but resolving a conflict
with each other.
Right.
Yeah.
But what happens though is when people who try to bring up other topics that have no place, for example, in the workplace, like when people start questioning you on your political views based because they found your YouTube channel, and then they want to question you on abortion or veganism or whatever the case may be, and that's irrelevant to when I'm supposed to be stalking at Walmart or whatever, like I was back then. That's irrelevant to the case. Or that,
right.
You're
supposed to be doing your job right then, not get into a big old debate about certain things.
Yes, and also, I feel like lunch time is the worst time because then people are eating there, they're sitting at the tables, and it gives them too much time to get into debates and talk about stuff. Because the TV will be on, and there will be stuff about politics. There will be stuff about what the president is doing, what other people are doing, or whatever crime happened recently. So then everybody, whatever's on the TV at the time, everybody else starts talking about the situation. Well, and I think this. Well, no, but I think this. And then people start arguing with each other over who was in the right or wrong about some shooting that happened, who was right or wrong, and then you know, and then one person will, instead of mentioning the policies the president's doing, they're going to talk about the size of the president's penis, and he does that, and
yeah, there is somebody.
Yes, there's someone who actually does that.
And what does that have to do with what kind of a president he is?
Right.
And what he's trying to accomplish, what his policies are. That's a real red herring. It gets way off the subject.
I know.
Has nothing to do with it.
Yes, and the reason I even mention that is because that's the perfect example I'm talking about. Like, well, you know, I don't like this president because he has a small penis. And then,
first of all, how do they know that?
And
that's what's scary. They should know things like that.
I'm like, how do you know about the size of this man's penis? I'm concerned about you. You know, it's like, so it turns into this thing where people, they don't have anything actual to say about a person, so then they start making up theories about the size of their parts.
Yeah, which kind of shows something's not quite right with them, that they're focused on a thing like that anyway.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it gets interesting, doesn't it?
It certainly does, and also it can be challenging for someone like me who's a literal walking distraction, because somebody looks at me and they're like, what's that? And they get distracted. So I'm like an accidental red herring. But hopefully I don't smell...
Even though you're not red.
I'm not red, and hopefully I don't smell like fish either, but...
You never know. I mean, you don't eat fish, so maybe
that
helps.
Yeah, it might help if you don't eat fish. And
unless when you were trying to stalk things, you had to be around fish.
Yeah, and that's very unfortunate. But that's exactly a prime example of what I'm saying is people are distracting things about these various things. And for example, when people... And here's a common thing when people are debating religion, for example. People will be talking about the Bible or about Christianity, and I've actually heard people do this, where people talk about, well, you know, the Bible has trouble, there's contradictions, and I don't really know if I believe in God, and people talk about this kind of stuff, and then people are trying to go, well, you know, if it weren't for Christianity, we would not have had these inventions, society would have not progressed because of this and that, and Christianity has done good. But the thing is, whether people have done good who call themselves Christians or not actually has nothing to do with the existence of God. It has nothing to do with which parts of the Bible are true or false.
Right, that's totally getting off track, isn't it?
It's getting off track.
It's not relevant at all.
Yeah.
You know, just to point out certain other truths, but it's not related to the main issue that's being discussed.
Yeah. And also, a person could also mention, well, people of various different religions have also done good and bad things. Right. Which is also true.
So that doesn't prove anything about any of the religions.
Right.
You're just stating a fact that this has been done good, but then this has been done bad by different people.
Yeah.
That has nothing to do with what's right or wrong or true or false.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing people do is they try to distract things. They try to make things seem connected as they're not. For example, evolution versus creationism, for example. First of all, these two things don't have to be in conflict. But I think what happens is that people, they try to say, well, it's either things evolved or things were created by God, but they're theistic evolution people as well, who believe in both. And
where they believe that God created it, but that doesn't mean that things don't change over time.
Right.
Because certain animals have adapted to the environment, and it's actually, in a way, it's almost like a gift from God, the ability to to change as needed by some
Yeah.
of these creatures.
Well, to me, that gives me stronger faith, actually, believe it or not. And here's what it means, because if you view life as something that is just an inert thing that is not capable of changing, that seems like poor design.
Yeah.
But the idea that life can adapt and change
Yeah.
as needed to survive environments, that's actually a stronger case.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm sort of a weird religious thing myself, but I do tend to believe in a hybrid combination of things like that I
Yeah.
can see things as compatible.
Yeah, there are people that believe that
Right.
way. They believe in both.
And so what people do though is they try to bring up irrelevant things. Like there are some people who they try to argue that you know the Earth is 6,000 years old, and the thing is, a person can believe that, I don't care, but it basically ultimately doesn't change whether or not God exists. It doesn't change what you are doing in your
Yeah.
life now. And so
People make a big issue about things that should just be a minor point.
yeah, things
And
that
then they fight about it and act like it's... You know, I saw a debate with somebody who believed differently in that regard about how old the Earth is.
yeah.
And they were both Christians, but one of them believed that the Earth has been around a longer time, and then the other one didn't believe that.
Yeah.
And they got so mad, the one that didn't believe in that, they started calling that other person a heretic just because they had a difference in what they believed about how old the Earth was.
Yeah.
And so, see how people turn it into a personal thing and call each other names and...
Well, and he did. It's that. First of all, that's a perfect example of what we're talking about and getting into irrelevance anyway and attacking a person. But here's something to consider: when people are calling someone a heretic, what they're really meaning is, well, there's this person who doesn't believe the same way I do, and that's literally why you're having a debate, because the other person
Yeah.
disagrees with you. That's the whole point.
But if it bothers them that much
Yeah.
that they've got to resort to name calling, there's something not quite right with that person.
yeah.
That they can't just discuss or debate things on grounds of facts that they know, rather than calling somebody a name because it upsets
Yeah.
you that they disagree.
Well, yeah, and also people do this. Also, this is relevant for gay and transgender people. One of the things people do is they try to do this whole, you know, Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve, you know, and they're
Yeah.
like, well, you know, only men and women reproduce, and therefore being gay is wrong, and all this weird.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, some people are not trying to reproduce, so it's irrelevant. If you're trying to reproduce, then yeah, you want to do heterosexuality. But some people aren't trying to, so it's irrelevant. But it also doesn't really state anything about the morality. People try to mention Adam and Eve, like, oh, well, God made Adam and Eve, and therefore what happened back then means that you're wrong now because of whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
And that's irrelevant,
It's
once
a
again.
way. It's a way of changing the subject, beating around the bush, focusing on a different thing to stop the main discussion that's being had, and not to be able to lay out any kind of real proofs or real evidence of anything that has to do with the topic you're discussing. So it's a way of diverting from something you don't want to really hear or talk about, and try to defame that other person, so other people will just discount them as well.
Right, and see, another thing that's done to, for example, to discredit pro-life people, as I've seen this happen, is that there will be people who they all will be, you know, they'll be at pro-life protests and they'll try to make abortion illegal, but then, you know, when someone in their family has an unplanned pregnancy, then they will take them for an abortion, which is hypocritical, of course. But then what the pro-choice people do is say, well, see, these people who are supposed pro-life, they'll even go for abortions when it suits them. So what that means is those people are hypocrites. But then people try to say that discounts the whole pro-life movement. No, it just means those.
Just because they're being a hypocrite doesn't make abortion
what
right.
it means is those hypocrites who do this are liars, and you can't trust them. But fortunately, having the facts and the opinions of what the moral stance is does not depend on a particular person. And so if you think that by eliminating specific people or attacking certain people is what you're trying to do, that's not going to work, because if something is real, it's going to stand the test of time. Even if you were to kill everybody with a particular opinion, new people will still come along who will come to those same opinions and conclusions, even if you kill everybody who has a specific belief.
If they have any kind of a brain where they can think, they're going to come up with some of those same conclusions, and then their generation of people are going to be mad at them too, of course.
Exactly, and this has happened throughout many times in history where somebody will stumble upon some truth, and then people are like, well, we don't like this, and we're going to shut you up. Kind of like what happened to Galileo. It was Galileo, like, he came up with the idea, that the planets were revolving around the sun instead of like the sun going around the earth and stuff.
Yeah.
And because even though it's irrelevant to everything, like it doesn't really matter that much to our daily lives, which is happening.
Yeah.
But apparently that upset people because they had a belief that it worked one way. And for him to come along with a new idea, then they wanted to get rid of him. They tried to get him to recant it. They tried to get him to not to.
And the only reason he finally did is they were threatening him and his family, to kill him, and they already kicked him out of the church for it because it became such a big religious deal because everybody wanted things to be the way they had always believed.
Yeah.
And now. I almost all of us, at least, I hope, know better now. And we know through, astronomy and all the discoveries that, yes, things revolve around the sun, not the other way around. We know that now, but he figured it out, and they made him have to go back on it just to protect himself and his family, to keep them from being punished and killed over his new belief that they didn't want to accept.
Yeah, and here's the thing is when a person comes along and they say something that you don't know much about or you disagree with, the thing to do is to, you can discuss it, but you don't need to attack that person. You don't need to win an argument by killing them and their entire family or something like that. And you could there's always the possibility that you could be wrong about something too, so it's worth looking into, learning more about it.
What I do is if I'm not totally sure if what they're saying is right or not, because I may not have all the information I need, I'll eventually kind of call a truce and say, okay, let me go and do more research on this. And then we can come back together and talk about it further. Because I'm admitting I don't know everything, and there might be some things I need to study and figure out. And so I'll go and do the research, and then I'll come back and discuss it more when I have more information to go by. Because they may be right, and I may be wrong, or they may be partly right, and I'm partly wrong. And it's good to just agree to do more research to find the answers and then discuss it again if you really just plain don't know for sure, instead of keeping the argument going like that.
Yeah, it's strange because people, they definitely, it's a learning opportunity. It's a learning moment when people disagree. It gives them a chance to possibly learn more about what the other person, what their side is. And honestly, I feel like what could happen, for example, pro-life and pro-choice people could actually learn a lot from each other. Because see, what happens is that, pro-life people have the point that they're resisting murder, but that it's still wrong to kill innocent people, the most innocent of which are those who haven't had a chance to live their lives yet. But at the same time, See, pro-choice people, sometimes they make some points that I agree with. But those points are also not about abortion. They make points like, well, doctors won't allow women to be sterilized because they refuse to do, hysterectomies or tubal ligations and stuff, and which is a weird thing. And I specifically remember there was a certain abortion group where someone was sharing a resource, a link to all the doctors that would do sterilization surgeries for people. Mm-hmm. And I remember, this was many years ago, but I remember I shared it because my idea is, as a pro-life person, I believe that if people want to be sterilized so that their bodies can't get pregnant, if they're going to keep having sex and that they don't want to be pregnant, I support sterilization for people who want it. And they're trying to say, well, pro-life politicians or whatever, they want to deny women access to contraception and these sterilization. Yeah. Now, maybe some of them do, and I think they're wrong in that regard, because I figure the goal is, if you believe that abortion is murder, and then you want to reduce the number of pregnancies for the people who don't want children, so that they won't be in a situation where they'll consider killing the children because those children won't exist. Pregnancy never happens in the first place. So I'm for celibacy, I'm for sterilization, and that makes me a little bit different than some other people. But when pro-choice people mention about that, I'm like, hey, they shared a resource on where people can go to get their sterilizations. I support that.
See, and one topic leads to another, but you have to also follow through and finish the one topic.
Right.
Instead of just going around in circles.
Yes, and see, for example, when people do that and they try to bring up, topics like that about the sterilization and doctors being unwilling to do it. Now, what they're doing is they're bringing up a topic that's a distraction, and yet it's not completely without relevance. It does have relevance to the abortion topic, but you still have to keep on the topic, and then
you can expand to other aspects of it.
Yeah,
but if you just don't want to face something or admit one thing, and then so you change the subject to something else that might be somewhat related to it, but it still misses the point.
Yeah.
Then that gets everybody off track.
Yeah, and what I find is sometimes you have people who are really on the same side, but then they'll have some minor argument over details. For example, people who are against abortion, they have different opinions on how is the best way to reduce abortion. Some people think that making abortion illegal is the top goal. And I think that's important, but I don't think that should be our only area of focus. I do think that, allowing people, their sterilization for those who want it. But I also think having the pro-life pregnancy centers and other organizations that help pregnant women in need and who have small children, like that, having these things to help people who
because some of it's a financial thing.
That's a big part of it.
They don't have the money to take care of themselves or take care of their baby, and those places will assist with those things just to save life and keep people alive. And then the person has the option of either giving the baby up for adoption, or if they get all the resources they need, they may keep the baby.
Right. And so it's important that we don't just have one focus. And so different people have different ways to help alleviate the problem, to reduce the reasons that women are choosing abortion in the first place.
Yeah.
And also, for example, vegans and vegetarians and animal rights activists, for example, sometimes they have minor disagreements on certain topics. And people who don't know many vegans, they might think we all think the same, because you probably only met one vegan or none in your life, because we are exceedingly rare. But sometimes we'll have different disagreements on organizations like PETA, for example. Now, PETA is the People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. Now, here's the thing is, there's things that I disagree with that certain activists at PETA do. For example, I don't agree with like the shelters that they run. How that they do put animals down. They do put animals to sleep, and they do kill them when they have too many. Which, because I'm against killing and I'm pro-life in general, I don't support that. And also some of their activism where they get people's attention by using naked women who are, hardly wearing anything, and then they have them act like they're a cow that was slaughtered or whatever. And yes, it gets people's attention, but it gets them the wrong kind of attention.
Yeah.
And so I don't agree with their activism methods. But as I said to a friend years back, I'm glad for the existence of the people for the ethical treatment of animals. I'm glad the organization exists, but I don't agree with half the stuff they do.
Now, some other organizations are I think, a lot better.
Yeah, like Mercy for Animals.
Mercy for Animals is an amazing organization. And I think that the things they do are a lot more constructive.
Yeah, and also there's this organization called Vegans for Preborn Rights or something like that. And so they are against abortion, but also against the killing of other animals too. So they teach about how to go vegan, and how there's the moral connection between the abortion topic and being pro-life for the humans as well as the other animals. Mm-hmm. And I love their website. It's a very simple website. It has a lot of stuff to read, and it's almost word for word what I personally believe, because I'm about consistent and respecting life of all the species and genders and everything. So I think that's a really good one. And sometimes these issues have relevance. Mm-hmm. And finding where things are relevant and they connect with each other, and start how people like me piece together, the golden rule as Jesus and teachers of various religions have taught, and also with respecting life and not killing other humans or the other animals. For me, I'm taking different parts of different things, realizing these things are relevant to each other, and I'm bringing them together. At the same time, other people are trying to distract from issues when they're having a discussion about one topic and bring up something that is irrelevant. And so every time this happens, whenever you're having a discussion with someone and they try to bring up some topic that has seemingly no relevance, what you can do is, well, how is this related? How does this relate to what we were talking about? And try to get back on track, but then make note of that so that you can discuss that other topic later and then find out if it has any relevance to the case. Because find out, are people honestly communicating with you, or are they just trying to distract you from the topic being discussed? Yeah. Because if you're trying to talk to someone and they're just playing mind games with you and being dishonest and trying to trick you into agreeing with things that you don't agree with, it's time to end the discussion right there. Because no good will come from it until you have an agreement of honest communication.
Yeah, when we were talking about honesty and being straightforward and, and there's so many different ways that people lie, that isn't just saying a specific thing that's not true, but also anytime you're trying to deceive somebody in any way, that's still lying. Mm-hmm. Like when you leave out information because you're trying to steer people in the wrong direction to think something, or you say something that isn't quite true to try to send them the other direction and make them think this, or make them trying to manipulate what people think or don't think. That is a type of lying. And I was thinking about how Jesus said he wants us to be straightforward and honest and plain in the way we speak to one another. And the scripture that came to my mind is in Matthew chapter 5, verses 33 through 37, where this was part of the Sermon on the Mount. But he said some things that, in regard to, like, people, back then people made certain kinds of oaths to try to put strength to what they say. I'm telling you the truth. I swear by this or that. Now we do it about other things. Like even in court, swear on the Bible, I swear on this, I swear on that. And Jesus addressed, if you have to strengthen what you say by swearing on anything, he was saying, that's not really being straightforward and really honest. And so this part, I'm reading this in the Net Bible. It makes it a lot more clear. It's talking about oaths, different kinds of oaths that people make. And he said, again, you have heard that it was said to an older generation, do not break an oath, but fulfill your vows to the Lord. But I say to you, do not take oaths at all, not by heaven, because it is the throne of God, not by earth, because it is his footstool, and not by Jerusalem, because it is the city of the great king. Do not take an oath by your head, because you are not able to make one hair white or black. Let your word be yes, yes, or no, no. More than this is from the evil one. And remember who the evil one is? It's Satan. And when we get off track and we want to get an idea across to people that we want them to believe, and then we try to say, well, I swear I'm right by this, by that. And, like I said, back then they did it the way Jesus gave those examples. But now we do it over in other ways. Mm-hmm. And, just for fun, give that example about that guy that, so do you swear on your mother's grave?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so this guy asked his daughter, do you swear on your mother's grave? And she says, yes. Wait, mom's not dead. And he says, yeah, but she will be someday. I want to get used to swear on her grave. Like, that was so weird. Her mother wasn't even dead.
And really, how does that verify that you're really telling the truth?
Right.
I swear on this. I swear on that. So that's why Jesus said, leave out all that stuff.
Well, basically, it violates what Jesus said to swear on the Bible.
Exactly.
Our
practices in court and all that, those don't come from God.
So what it comes down to is, if I'm ever in a courtroom and they try to get me to swear on the Bible, I'll say no, because Jesus said not to swear on things. So, because I read the Bible and I know you're not supposed to swear on things.
See, and it's silly to swear on the Bible, especially since most people don't even know what it says. So how can you swear on it when you've never read it?
Yeah, and also, now the Net Bible, well, what's interesting about that is, years ago, I was trying to find an easy-to-read translation. And see, the Net Bible is unique because it was a new translation. It was done, I think, near the end of the 20th century, where they took all of these scholars who knew Hebrew and Greek and translated it again from the original languages. Part of it was because they were making more versions where they were taking existing English versions and they were just adding or removing certain verses and stuff.
Right, so they wanted to start all over and get it as accurate as possible.
Right, see, part of what happened is, part of the reason people have trusted the King James Version so much was just because people have tampered with different parts of the Bible in the newer versions they started making in the 20th century. So then people had to be like, let's start from scratch. Let's go back to original documents. Let's translate from Hebrew and Greek and find out what it said that way, because it had been too polluted by, like, there's people notice there's certain verses that are like it'll jump from verse 20 to 22, and there's this one part I don't remember which one, but
I know.
But you probably are familiar with that, where they just completely removed a verse from a certain version of the Bible, and so they had to go from scratch. So what I like about the Net Bible is that, first of all, you can read the whole thing for free on their website. They have a searchable website where, if you know how to navigate it,
no one owns it where they have to collect royalties.
Right.
That's part of the reason these different translations compete, because they want to make money off of God's word. And they
Right.
did not write God's word. They just translated it their own way.
Yeah.
And so, but this one doesn't do it, and it has so many footnotes
Mm-hmm.
that you can look in more depth and do more research to find out what everything really
Right.
means. And so it's a good translation, and sometimes, as long as it's an accurate translation, I like to read it out of one that's easier for us to understand.
Right.
Because it uses the way we talk. Because like in King James, that verse says, let your yea be yea and your nay be nay.
Yeah.
And the way we talk is, yes or no. So that's why I thought it'd be better to read it in there.
Actually, I think the way it's said there, yes, yes, no, no, I think it's very good that it says that. And here's why. Because there's a lot of people who are wishy-washy and they're moral relativists and they're afraid to say anything. So they're like, well, yes, but no, no, but yes. I don't want to say anything because I'm afraid people will get mad at me if I say the wrong thing. So they're all yes and no.
Yeah, yes and no, yeah.
But so I would rather just say yes or no and risk being wrong rather than be this person like, well,
right.
I mean, yes or no, I don't know, I'm scared.
It's all about being honest and
Yeah.
straightforward.
Yeah.
And that's why we're naming this episode The Honest Truth.
Yeah.
Because, people say, well, I'll tell you the honest truth, but we need to truly, truly speak the honest truth and not beat around the bush, not hem and haw, not change the subject, not pretend we believe this, but, we really believe that. God wants us to be honest and straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
And all this beating around the bush and using red herrings and all that stuff, that's not being honest. And so that's why we felt like this was something that we needed to talk about today, because there's a lot of people I know who don't even realize they're lying, or they won't admit they're lying.
Yeah.
Because they don't come right out and say, well, I didn't say it like that, so I wasn't really lying. But they were deliberately trying to deceive somebody.
It's about the intent to deceive something.
Exactly. And when it comes right down to it, that's what a lot of people are doing. And then you say, well, I didn't really lie. And see, that's a lie right there, because they really did.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things. We've got to learn how to be honest. There's hardly anybody being honest in this society and saying what they mean and meaning what they say.
Yeah. And, it's interesting. Another thing, and I think this is important to mention, is, so part of the reason that I tell people about, like the Net Bible, and because it's easier to read, it's written in modern English, and because they translate from the original languages. Part of the reason I promote it is because one of the things that I have seen happen is when people try to claim copyright on versions of the Bible, they are liars. They are lying. Because on the one hand, they'll say, oh, it's God's word, and these are the words of God, but then God owns it, then they don't. Second of all, it wasn't written down directly by God, but written down by different people throughout history who spoke different languages and wrote it down, and it was copied and translated over centuries and millennia. Yeah. And so they can't claim copyright because either those people who wrote it own it or God owns it. But so if they claim copyright on the Bible, they're committing ultimate blasphemy and lying, because they're saying, well, you have to pay me for this because I translated it from older languages, therefore I own it now. And that's actually violates U.S. copyright law too, because like I was reading about it, you can't just translate something from another language and then claim that you own the copyright, because you're still not the original author.
Right.
So you can't legally do that, yet people get away with that, and they're like, well, you have to pay us royalties if you quote too many of our verses from our version of the Bible.
And that's what they do with certain other translations.
Yeah, and so
if you quote it, that, you know, in a book you're writing or whatever, then you're supposed to pay them.
Yeah.
As though now you don't have to do that with the King James because it's considered public domain by now because it's so old.
Because it's so old, it's considered public domain by now.
And you don't have to do that with the Net Bible because they don't require it.
And also, this is actually very relevant too. So in my programming book, which I haven't finished, there's a book that I've been writing called Chastity's Code Cookbook, but I believe it's chapter 11, where I quote some Bible verses in there. And you don't see this in programming books usually. However, what I was doing is I was connecting my views for the free open source software movement and also my views on religion and the Bible too. I was quoting from the Net Bible, and I was explaining about the importance, you know, of free software and freedom from censorship, and this idea that we brought nothing into this world, we could take nothing out of it. So what I was doing in the book is I was renouncing ownership of the code I wrote in my own book. Like, I'm literally saying that I didn't invent a number. I did not invent electricity. Like, I'm saying that, you know, God gave us these things for everybody. We all need to share. And so I was basically saying that my views on the Bible and my views on computer software are one and the same. That it should be free for everybody, for their benefit, so they can learn.
Right.
And also, if you believe that what people believe has eternal consequence for them, although I'm not clear on the details myself, to be quite honest, I feel like to restrict who's able to read what, if it's going to make a difference for their life or all eternity for them, why would you ever restrict them from being able to read?
Exactly.
You know?
Something's really wrong with that attitude.
Yeah. Like, don't you want people to know the truth? Or is it so important that you get money from people? And this is why you can't serve God and money.
Right.
No one can serve two masters.
Yeah. And what about all the scriptures that talk about greed?
Yeah.
And to watch out for it.
And,
see, so they're contradicting the very Bible that they've translated.
Yeah, and interestingly, like what Jesus said about it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. That was an interesting statement right there. Because the point is that money and greed often gets in the way of doing the right thing.
Yeah, because people end up depending on that money.
Yeah.
And they, you know, now if God helps us get rich, we should use that to help other people and not just spend it all on ourselves.
Right.
But if people count on that money for security, they're making an idol out of it.
Right. And that's why it's always good to have a priority check about what your priorities are. Mm-hmm. And I feel like too many people, they have prioritized money and they've used the Bible as a means to just get money out of people by making people pay them royalties for how much they use their stuff.
That's really, really sad.
Yeah.
Because that goes against the very Bible they're trying to promote by translating it.
Yeah, so clearly those people don't actually believe the Bible. They're not following the teachings of Jesus, and so they're not Christians, and yet they're making money off of the Bible. Yeah. That's a high level of evil right there.
So yeah, you know, there's hypocrisy in just about every field, and sometimes it's where you might least expect it.
Mm-hmm.
That's why people don't trust a lot of church people, because of some of the things that are going on that are hypocritical. And that's why we have to find out how God really wants us to do things, and we have to obey Him and stick to that and not get off track and not even try to throw a red herring out there to God to distract from what He's trying to get us to do.
Yeah. And don't let other people's hypocrisy distract you from what you should be focused on. And I think, especially, don't let people in church who call themselves Christians tell you that you can or cannot be a Christian, or whether God is pleased with you or not. That's for you and God to discuss. That's not for other people who don't know who you are to tell you.
Right. Right. Because God says He loves us.
Mm-hmm.
all of us with an everlasting love, and he's trying to draw everybody to himself that are willing to come. He's ready for us, and therefore nobody has a right to turn people out of the kingdom of God and tell them that God doesn't want them.
Mm-hmm.
So, amen.
Amen. Preach it, mother.
Anyhow, well, this was an interesting thing that God put on our hearts to talk about today. And we always have to just kind of see what God wants to do. And we don't ever know for sure from week to week exactly how we're supposed to go about it. But God, if he wants us doing this, he, even if it's at the last minute, he always shows us what direction to go, because this is his program. This is his podcast.
Yeah.
And he's making sure we talk about what people need to hear.
Mm-hmm.
So, God bless you all for listening to us. And we always throw a little humor in there somewhere, don't we?
God bless us, everyone.
Okay, Tiny Tim.
Oh.
Yes, I